Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast. Oh my goodness, I have a treat for you today. My guest today is known as the Conversation Doc, Dr. Robyn Silverman. Dr. Silverman is a teen and child development specialist and author of the best-selling book, How to Talk to Kids About Anything, as well as the host of the popular podcast of the same name. Dr. Silverman is the co-founder of the Powerful Words Character System, which gives educators the talking points they need to help children become kind, responsible citizens of the world. And she's here with us today.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hello, Dr. Silverman. It's been a long time.
It's so good to see your face. I'm really happy to be here with you.
They can't see our faces, but we can see each other as we're recording. And again,
I know. You're looking good. Thank
you. I mean, the last time we spoke, I was on your podcast talking about how to talk to kids about learning differences.
Yes,
and
right.
It just seems like that was so long ago.
I know it does. And yet it was such a good episode that it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. I think I relaunched it recently. Maybe that's why, and listened to it again.
That might be it. I mean, on your podcast, you talk about how to talk to kids about blank, fill in the blank. And you have a new book out that is about how to talk to kids about anything. Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. And I just love, and I'm taking notes on everything that you wrote in the book because, as you know, I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and there's much to talk about all the time.
It's so true. And thank you for that. Congratulations. It was a real labor of love. And I'm so happy it's out in the world right now. And now I'm starting to hear back from people about how it's affecting them and how they're using the scripts and the tips in there in real conversations in their own homes. And I've absolutely had to use them in mine. So
Yes.
I'm so excited to talk to you about it today.
I am too. I mean, you really guide parents through those tough and important conversations that they have with their children, that I have had with my children. And I love that it's not only guidance that's rooted in your experience, but it's also rooted in research and your interactions with so many experts. I mean, you delve into everything from how to talk to your kids about anger, sadness, self-esteem, sex, death, diversity and inclusion, divorce. And today we're going to talk about how to talk to kids about mistakes and failure, which is a big one.
It is a big one. And actually one of the ones I talk about the most, mainly because it affects everybody. Okay. Like there's not a time or age group that isn't dealing with that. So it doesn't feel like, oh, it's time to talk to kids about this topic. Like, let's get on it. It's really throughout their childhood, it changes and flows. I talk about it all the time with my own kids. And truth be known, like people say, oh, I use that on my staff member, this fellow teacher, myself, my spouse. So you hear a lot about it.
Absolutely. I mean, when I read the chapter in your book, it really brought back so many conversations I have with parents whose kids have struggled, are struggling with learning, with their social relationships. And because they have trouble with schoolwork on the playground, they often worry about messing up, which is why I love that chapter. And, you know, I'd love for you to talk about how do we help kids understand that failing and mistakes are part of life?
It's such a difficult one because we are coming up in a framework where achievement culture is looming. So how can we teach our kids that failure and mistakes is okay when they're constantly getting messages that tell them that they're not enough, that they need to be more, they need to sign up for more, and that if they don't do their somebody else's best, not even their own best. If they don't do better than best, then they won't be considered for the top-notch schools, programs, whatever they want in life. Things will just go down the tube. So it is really important to make your home the safe haven where they are getting the message that mistakes are not only okay, they're expected, and that the only way we get out of our comfort zones, the only way we grow and we learn is if we take the risk and try. And if we fail, that's okay. We can make corrections, and we can use some new techniques to reframe that idea of mistakes and failure in a way that says this is normal. And in fact, it's important to our success.
Right. I mean, and it's true. I mean, from childhood all the way to adulthood, we experience failures. We make mistakes. And I love the fact that we have to normalize that for our kids and, to own up to our own failures and mistakes that we've had. And especially with the backdrop of a culture with this quest for perfection that you talked about, it's really hard to shift the conversation from a mistake being a failure, which is often in the heads of so many of our kids, to mistakes being opportunities.
That's right. And I love that you said that mistakes are opportunities, because that's one of the shifts that I talk about in my book. And in fact, comes from research and comes from experience talking to experts who work with elite athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I talk about Dr. Dara Harris, who works with the Toronto Blue Jays, and she works with these elite athletes and talks about how can we talk to these elite athletes and help them make these adjustments so that they can get better and better. And one of the things that she talks about is that these elite athletes don't regard mistakes as mess ups and blunders and failures, but rather as opportunities to learn. And that's the reason why they can do so well. Oh, that didn't work out. Let me make this shift. Try again. Oh, that worked better, but I still need to do this. Let's make a shift. And they keep learning and they keep getting better. So how can we apply that same knowledge to our children in everyday circumstances, to ourselves in everyday circumstances? So in the book, I provide a box where it says, let's shift our language from this to that. I do that often throughout the book. But in that chapter, it's talking about let's not say, it's a blunder, a catastrophe. Let's move it to a learning opportunity, a trial, an experiment. That way we say, all right, trial number one, this is what went well. This is what didn't go well. This is what I need to change or improve upon. And then we move forward. I know a lot of people talk about the Carol Dweck information on mindset and how we can look at our mistakes as learning opportunities as well. So even in research related to academics, which that was related to kids in mathematics, where you're saying every single time you make a mistake, your brain grows, those connections can grow. Now you're getting it from different angles. So it's still a repackaging of the words we use around mistakes and failures. I mean, if you think about it, growing up, even when we were growing up, mistakes and failures, you're getting an F on your report card, or you're getting a big red letter on your paper. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like a learning opportunity. And in school, sometimes it's not. You get the F and it just stays. It's not like, hey, you got an F. Here's some of the shifts you need to make, unless you're in a school that does that.
Absolutely. And it feels like when kids get that F or that D or whatever that grade is, we have to again make the shift. You've been talking a lot about shifts, that a failure is not a reflection of who you are. Again, it's an opportunity to grow and to become better at hard things.
Right. And to your point, it's a snapshot. of a particular moment where maybe you didn't study, in the way that you needed to. Doesn't make you not smart. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you studied in a way that didn't work for you. Oh, you studied in a group this time and turns out that doesn't work for you. You studied with the music on, that didn't work for you. And you can make that shift. So it's a snapshot in time. It's not a reflection, as you said, of who you are yourself. And growing from that, when I talk about that in my book, when we say, well, that's just who I am, that can be very dangerous, as you know from your work, where we kind of go all encompassing, that generalized, I suck at everything. We moved on, I failed this test, to like, my whole world is unraveling. I suck at everything. I'm a horrible student. And instead, making that shift, as we're talking about, to that was one test, that was one day that I wasn't feeling my best. I was distracted because I had a fight with a friend. There was a circumstance. Then that child feels like I can have control over this situation because I can prepare differently. I can make sure that I have headphones on during that time, whatever it is, to shift so that oh, this is something I can change. It's not who I am. It's the circumstance that surrounded me at the time.
Right. And then that brings us back to the opportunity to do something different the next time. They can ask and reflect on, what can I do differently to make the outcome better or increase the chances that the outcome will be different, right?
Yes. Yes. I actually really love my kids go to a school where the philosophy is more along those lines. My daughter goes to the school, my son's going to be going next year, where if they submit, let's say, a report and it's not at the point where they have had full understanding, maybe in a traditional school, they would have gotten the F. And that would have been the end and they would have moved on. The teacher provides feedback and says, here are some things that you need to work on. Please resubmit it. And to me, that makes so much sense. It's such a good way of learning, but also what a good way of thinking about life and your learning. Okay, like, this didn't work out. Like, this didn't wind up reflecting the knowledge that I know that you have, the high expectations that I have of you, or you didn't understand this concept. Let me explain it to you better, or go back and read this and then expand on it in this paper or on this test, and then resubmit it. And then you show, yes, you are able to do it. What a great opportunity for these kids as students. But let's take that knowledge and apply it to life, to the soccer field, to the gymnastics floor, to, your art or your music, whatever a child does, so that they can see, even when riding a bike, okay, I'm going to take this knowledge, get this feedback, maybe from a coach, maybe from myself, and then move forward.
And the truth is, we can apply this to all aspects of our lives, like you're saying, because if a child is picking up an instrument for the first time, they're not going to be perfect at it the first time, right? It's going to take a long time to learn. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. My daughter's taking piano, and when she is introduced to a new piece, it doesn't sound that great. But, after she's practiced it over and over again, it's like, wow, you have really improved from the first time you played this. And again, noting the difference in behavior, in performance with some type of intervention or practice or, a new way of doing something is so important for kids to hear, because it shows them that the work that they're putting in has implications.
Yeah. And just to highlight that, when a child is given something for the first time, they can't compare themselves to somebody who's had it for
they can't.
months, right? So we have to be really careful and cognizant of the comparisons that we make. We make comparisons in many areas of our lives. People do it with body type, this person looks this way and I look that way. Therefore, I'm horrible and this person is better than me. Not taking into consideration genetics and societal pressure that says that that is the beauty standard. And we do need to, because the perfectionism and the feeling of failure even applies to how we look. And to take in something else that you said, where your child was able to succeed in a specific way with a particular piece, but maybe the second piece she got, she starts not so good. That evidence of completing something, of doing well, needs to be looming. And sometimes kids, especially when they're in those school age years where things need to be very concrete before they get into those teen years where things can be more abstract, taking pictures of the kids when they have achieved a particular goal, or recording them when they have finally gotten the piece and gotten it to a point where they're really proud, so that they can listen to it again. Little reminders that say, hey, you did this, and then you can do it again. I have faith in you, and you are seeing with your own eyes, you're hearing with your own ears that you have achieved this with hard work, with effort. It was not the overnight success. And even through the mistakes, and you may even record the mistakes along the way,
right,
you got to the end point.
Yes. And that is so true for so many students that we work with who have learning differences. And they may struggle with reading and say, I'm just not a good reader, or I'm just not a math person. I hear that over and over again. I'm just not good at math. But again, showing them that evidence. Well, I remember when you couldn't even read this page and you just went through it. And again, you have to not compare them to other students who may have been able to read that page, for over the past year, but to show that child their progress is so important from what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, very much so. I mean, the only person we really can compare ourselves to is ourselves. And it's hard because these kids are constantly being compared, or they feel like they should be compared because they're in class with these other people. They're in class with them at school. They're in groups or teams with them on sports fields, or in orchestras with them, and in classes and extracurriculars after school. It's hard not to compare yourself to the person next to you. And that has to be part of the mistakes and failure conversation, that this is not a race to a specific spot. And once somebody achieves that goal, it goes away. Everybody is going to have their own race, if you will, but it's not timed. And everybody is going to get to wherever they need to go, depending on their effort, their focus. And I tell my kids, sometimes things will be more challenging for you than somebody else. And if you need help, please ask. It's okay to ask. I've asked many times. I would tell them in math class in high school, I was in my math teacher's extra class or their office hours pretty much every day, because I knew for myself I needed that to help me understand, to provide some accountability, and just to have somebody else there while I was working things out. If I had questions, that's okay. And you know what? I turned out pretty okay, and in the academic department, and I did need help, and that's okay.
And the other thing that you say, and you've done such a great job on telling parents and giving them a script in terms of what they can say, but you also talk about the need to it's not only important what you say, but how you behave, and they have to match up. And one thing that jumped out at me in your book is parents have to ask themselves, do I treat my child more positively and kindly when they perform perfectly? Or I might add, behave perfectly, and treat them more negatively and harshly after imperfect performances or behaviors. And that requires a great deal of introspection from the parent's part, because sometimes you're not even aware you're doing it.
Yes. Gosh, it's not easy. I mean, nobody is going to say that this is something easy to do. And as a child development specialist, and I'm sure in your position too, it doesn't make it so it's easier. It's not like, oh, like people will be like, I bet your children are perfect and you're perfect.
They're not.
No,
Mine aren't.
it's just a full on, like, absolutely not. Because, and I do know it when words are coming out of my mouth in a way that I'm like, this is not awesome. Or like after I, lose my sauce and I'll be like, I had a little thing on my shoulders, like, isn't that the best you could do? And you're like, yeah, in that moment, that was my best.
That's all I had.
That's what I was doing. So you do need to be aware of what you're saying. And I think the question for people who are listening is, am I doing this? Like, if you think about it, when your child comes home with a great grade or, makes the goal, versus comes home with an average or low grade, or misses the goal, is your way of being with your child different?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying obviously you're going to congratulate your child and you're going to be excited, but is your feeling towards them, is your treatment towards them different so that they only feel valued when they achieve? And that's a hard question because it says, well, we're not perfect and we know that, right? But we don't want to be that way. But it happens a lot. And so what I would say to people who are probably listening in and going, ouch, and yes, I'm there with you. And the given is that we always have the option of a do-over and a try again ourselves. We're going to make a ton of mistakes. We are. And we need to be able to say, all right, I didn't do that in the way that makes me feel awesome when I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to go back to my child and say, hey, you missed the goal. And I guess I got caught up in that too. And I just want you to know, like, you are just as valuable of a person when you miss the goal than when you make the goal. Obviously, it's always yay when you make the goal, like everybody's thrilled, but it doesn't make you less of a person when you miss the goal. Everybody's going to be making these mistakes, and your other team members are too, just like I make mistakes. And here's one of them. We're talking about it right now. I messed up, and so here's what I wish I said. People are always like, what am I supposed to do about this? Just say what you wish you said. Like, I wish in that moment I said, hey, I saw you hustling out there. What amazing effort you gave. Like, you gave it your all. You tried so many times to make that goal. Like, I love seeing that in you. That's your value. You just keep hustling. Sometimes it's going to come out, you get the goal. Sometimes it's not, but your value isn't the goal. It's the hustle. It's the perseverance that you provide, or whatever it is about your child. Oh, your friend missed the goal. You didn't devalue them. You said, hey, that was such a good try. Like, you made them feel better. Your benefit, like, to the team is what a leader you are and how you empathize. So see the value, even if the achievement hasn't been made, both in your child and in your own self.
Yes. And I love the idea of a do-over, that parents can also have a do-over and bring it to the attention of their child. You know what? I should have said that differently. Here's what I wanted to say. I absolutely love that. And we'll use that because
we all need it.
We all do. Sometimes things
just
come out and you're just like, oh, I should not have said that, or I should have reacted differently.
Yes.
And I think a lot of parents feel what their kids are feeling. They feel disappointed and then it comes out in that way. But we also need to, the same things that we were saying to our children, we have to say to ourselves, particularly when we think about the shame that gets involved when kids don't feel that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They feel like they made a mistake. They are the mistake, or they're terrible at something, whether that be playing soccer, making friends, learning how to read. What are some things that parents can do to keep from that shame cycle?
Yeah, I'm just like picking up on one of the things that you're saying. And I do talk about this in my book, that What we don't want to convey to them is the feeling like if you try and fail, then there's going to be some negative consequences, because the shame winds up transferring into, I'm just not going to try, right? Because if I try and I fail, then people will know I'm not so great. And so I'd rather not try and not fail, so people don't actually have anything to go on. And that's a real risk to this, right? That's the shame cycle taking hold and making a behavioral switch in your child, so that your child says, all right, I am not going to play soccer anymore. I'm not going to even study anymore, because when I study and I still don't do well, I get a negative consequence. So I might as well not study, so that people think, oh, she's smart, but she didn't study, so that's why she failed. It's not a character. It's not about my smarts. It's not about, it's about, oh, I just didn't want to study. So we have to be careful with that. So calling it out and saying, I see great potential in you. And I want you to know that your value lays in who you are as a person. It's not what you achieve. I know that XYZ is really important to you. I see your effort in XYZ. I'm like so amazed by that effort. And so I want you to know I see it and I notice it. And when you do it, I'm just super excited about, what's to come, because I think you can apply that to so many other areas of your life. And back off on the focus on the main achievement, the straight A, that you have to get the goal, because it's so narrow. That one thing is so narrow. We have to be really careful with that. And saying to them straight out, the society says that if you don't do this, you're going to amount to nothing. And I want you to know that it is just not true. And I know this is not true because, and you can fill in your own stories, your family's stories. I love stories, and you see them obviously in my book too, where there's even famous people who have failed, who have messed up completely, but their main thing was they kept putting the effort in. So if your child's young and you're listening to this, like you might say to them, and this is in the book, so you don't have to be writing this down, but like Dr. Seuss had to submit his book 27 times before somebody was like, hey, I think we should publish this. Walt Disney was fired from his first journalism job for not being creative enough. These are people that your kid is going to know and be like, wait, what? If it's a sports guy, there's tons of stories about sports, athletes that tried and failed, and, or they're, they love to talk a lot. Okay, well, Oprah Winfrey was also, fired from her first job and told you're never going to be fit for network TV. Now look. So some of these kinds of stories can help kids learn that it happens to everyone. It's not something that we need to feel shame about and feel like, oh, there's nothing we can do and I'm a bad person. It happens to everybody, and we can do something to learn from it and grow from it, and you can grow into an amazing success.
And I love that you are de-emphasizing outcome. I think that's so important for parents and for our society to de-emphasize the outcome and really to talk more about the process, which you're describing. And the other thing that we can do as parents, and you talk about this in your book, is to, again, own our own mistakes. We talked about do-overs, but also I love that you talk about in your book that it's important for parents to emphasize kindness over grades, and how that can actually contribute to less anxiety and depression, fewer behavioral problems and better grades.
Yeah, isn't that the irony right there, right? We need to realize that young kids, older kids, teens, many of them, according to the research, many of them feel that their parents value, that they are doing A work and being the top of the line athlete over them being kind. And that is a major concern. If they are getting that message, we wind up with kids who are crushed by performance anxiety and by the pressure of needing to achieve, but they're not necessarily very good people. And we want good citizens of the world. We want people who are showing themselves as great citizens who help others, who are kind to others, who are kind to themselves, who look around them and see, how can I be helpful? Not just the kid who's like got their head down, who only studies, who only works to achieve. And that's it. That's where it ends. To what end? If we are doing that, how does that help to bring out the best in our child? What is your definition of bringing out your best in your child? I think some of that really needs a reframe.
I completely agree. And that's one of the reasons why I love that you've written this book. You provide parents with tips, scripts, stories to make tough conversations, so much easier. Thank you so much for this. It really is a gift to parents everywhere. And I'm definitely going to put a link to the book in the show notes. But if listeners want to connect with you, is there a website where we can send them? What is the best way for them to learn more about all of the great things that you're doing?
Thank you. It's under Dr. Robyn Silverman. It's Robyn with a Y. And you can go to drrobynsilverman.com. And I'm also on social media. I would love it if you'd follow me on Instagram or Facebook. I mean, I'm all over the place trying to provide some little moments of tips or scripting so that we can have some springboards into some key conversations that help our children thrive.
Wonderful. And we will definitely put all of that information in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dr. Silverman. This has been such a pleasure.
Oh, it's been so much fun. I could talk to you all day.
Me too. Thank you so much for joining my conversation with Dr. Robyn Silverman. A link to where you can purchase her book is in the show notes. If you learned something today, enjoyed this conversation, let me know. Email me at drkiwilson@childnexus.com or drop me a DM at Child Nexus Community. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.